We're back now with our panel. Jennifer, where do things stand on the Republican side of the race?
Well, Ted Cruz is getting a reputation for outfoxing Donald Trump in that hand-to-hand delegate combat. So yesterday in Colorado, he swept up all of the available delegates there, now has 34 from Colorado. Iowa did the same thing. His people managed to squeeze themselves into all but one delegate slot in Iowa. And so he really is just running circles around Donald Trump in this particular case. Now, obviously, this won't matter if Trump gets to the necessary number before the convention, and they know that they're going to have trouble in a few of the upcoming contests. They know that Nebraska, South Dakota, Montana, possibly Washington State and Oregon are going to be trouble for them, but they
Trouble for Trump.
Trouble for Trump,
right.
Yes, sorry. But the Trump people do think that they're going to do well in almost all the other states, and that includes California and Indiana. And if they do, all of this delegate wrangling that that Ted Cruz is doing won't matter as much. Now, Trump is complaining that he thinks that this process is tilted. It seems like he's been more focused on the states that he's winning than, how you actually technically win. But he is listening to the fact that, he needs to do more. I have heard he is sending a crew down to the RNC's, the Republican National Committee's spring meeting in Florida in 10 days. And their whole mission is to meet the RNC members from the various states, really work on building relationships and telling, sending the message that they really want to work with the party officials.
Ramesh, I want to ask you, Donald Trump has been tweeting on this question of fairness. He wrote a tweet that said, "Isn't it a shame that the person who will have by far the most delegates and many millions more votes than anyone else, me, still must fight?" He's making this case on fairness grounds. Forget the math, forget 1,237. He's just got more. Shouldn't it go to him? How potent do you think that argument is?
Well, look, if he gets a majority of the vote and a majority of the delegates, he is going to be the nominee. And I don't think that the concept of majority rule is all that difficult or arcane for people to understand.
What if he just gets the plurality, though? He doesn't have the majority. It's an open convention. He's trying to say even that, since he'll have most of the delegates, that'd be unfair if he didn't get it.
He can try to make that argument, and maybe it'll sway some of the delegates, but I suspect it won't. I think he's got to do three things. One, get as many bound delegates as he can through the voting. Second, actually compete in this delegate selection process where so far Senator Cruz's people have been the only people showing up to the interview in a suit and a tie. And then third, he's got to actually organize an effort to sway supporters of other candidates on a second ballot, which you've heard almost nothing from the Trump campaign. Those are three very difficult things to do. If they had been trying to organize 2 months ago along those lines, they'd probably have this nomination wrapped up, but they are getting to it very late.
Dan, you go ahead.
I think Ramesh is right that Trump's, I have the most argument may not sway actual delegates, but I wouldn't ignore the extent to which actual regular voters may find the entire process unfair if the person who won the most of everything, but not quite the technical majority, didn't get the nomination. Just because the expectation voters have when going to these polls is not that some arcane process will determine the nominee, but the guy who won will determine the nominee. And so that I wouldn't put aside, because that's potentially very important.
John, I sat down Friday evening in New York with Paul Manafort, who has been tasked by Donald Trump to be the convention manager and, in a sense, to be in charge of now the whole process of accumulating the delegates. They're clearly in the middle of a transition in that campaign. They have been, as Jennifer said, they have been outfoxed, outcircled, outrun by the Cruz campaign in all of these organizing things. I think the challenge ahead for them is, can they now get their act together in this kind of hand-to-hand combat? But Manafort said, and he's laid down a marker, that they will be able to accumulate enough delegates so that it is clear he is going to be the nominee before Cleveland. And he said by mid-May, I hope we are, in a sense, the presumptive nominee. So they have set a very high bar for themselves, given the difficulty that they've been having.
I wondered about that word presumptive nominee. I mean, so I can claim I'm the presumptive nominee even if I haven't gotten the majority of delegates, by this standard that if you just have the most delegates of everybody, that makes you presumptive, right?
Well, I think it goes beyond that. I think that's part of it, but I think it is a recognition on the part of the party that he is inevitable at this point. Now, he thought they should have treated him better back in March when he was on a winning streak. That didn't happen for all the reasons we know about the questions about his qualification and his knowledge and whether he would take the party to a big loss. But they are hoping that if they can have a big night in New York and other states as we go forward, that the party establishment, in the ways that Jennifer again was talking about, of kind of build those bridges, that people begin to coalesce.
What do you make, Jennifer, of Trump's tone change a little bit, moving towards being presidential? Is that happening?
Right. So a month ago, he tried to do that, and then everything fell apart. And so a month ago, everyone was saying, okay, we think he is going to be inevitable, so we all need to live in that Trump world, and let's learn to accept it and work with him. And then that just disappeared. But, people are starting to advise him, start off at square one again. Go back to your original policy ideas where you're talking about, the wall, national security, health care, cleaning up Washington, D.C. Other people are saying, quit the Twitter addiction. Just stop now. If you're not going to do it when you're president, just quit tweeting now. And then really focus on the scoreboard and start racking up those delegates. But one thing about Cruz, he doesn't get enough credit for this with all this delegate wrangling, is it shows what a great micro-organizer his team is, and his strategy to say that, that shows that he could be a really great general election candidate because he really knows how to organize and excite.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you. Coming up next, PBS filmmaker Ken Burns previews his latest project, Jackie Robinson.